from the She graduated from the University of Rajasthan, India, did her post-graduation from USM, Malaysia, and PhD from University of Delhi, India. Since the beginning of her professional career, she has been deeply involved in academic and research activities. Ocular pharmacology and therapeutics is her research interest, and she has been very involved in investigations related to glaucoma, cataract, uveitis, and diabetic retinopathy. She has also worked in the area of development of drug delivery systems and pharmacovigilance. Prof. Fennu has more than 100 publications to her credit, including papers in high-index journals and chapters in various books published by international publishers of high repute. She has an H index of 21, and she has been an invited speaker at various meetings both nationally and internationally. Currently, she is involved in various administrative procedures for quality assurance in the medical program, as well as supporting research and publications by School of Medicine, International Medical University. Without much further ado, I would like to invite our distinguished speaker, who is also my mentor, Professor Dr. Renu Agawa, to deliver the talk. Please help me welcome Prof. Renu.
Hello everyone. In this talk, I will give you an overview on the potential use of magnesium-based compounds as therapeutic instruments in suppressing neuroinflammation with a focus on glaucoma. I will start with a little background on the role of ischemia and neuroinflammation in neurodegenerative conditions such as glaucoma. Next, I will talk about the role of magnesium in combating neurodegenerative conditions. And yes, the focus is on glaucoma. Then I'll talk about our own experience in this area of research and finally some concluding remarks. As I said earlier, glaucoma is a neurodegenerative condition and clinically it is characterized by characteristic changes in the optic disc as well as the visual field changes. The key features of this condition is apoptosis of retinal ganglion cells and degeneration of optic nerve fibers. So what is the pathophysiology behind the loss of RGCs or retinal ganglion cells and damage to optic nerve axons remains unclear. However, some of the risk factors are very well defined, and one of them is elevated intraocular pressure. However, we have observed that current therapies that mainly target to lower intraocular pressure are ineffective in certain patient populations. Despite lowering of IOP, the disease progression continues. On the other hand, we also have a population of patients who have high intraocular pressure, although there is no RGC loss. So certainly there are certain other factors playing a role in the progression of glaucomatous changes. And one of these factors, which has now been recognized very well, is the vascular dysregulation, which actually refers to reduced vascular perfusion in the retina and optic nerve. So what we know about vasomotor regulation in retina is that there is a balance in the action of nitric oxide and endothelin-1. We know that nitric oxide is a vasorelaxant, whereas endothelin-1 is a vasoconstrictor. In glaucomatous eyes, elevated levels of ET1 have been reported by several researchers. Not only that, reports also show us that there is increased sensitivity to ET1 mediated vasoconstriction in the retina and optic nerve of glaucomatous eyes. In rat models of glaucoma, also it has been observed that increased ET1 receptor expression in the retinas is associated with reduced RGC survival. So we can clearly see that there is an association of ischemia in retina and optic nerve with the loss of RGCs. Let us have a brief insight into the relationship of ischemia with neuroinflammation. We know that in the presence of ischemia, damaged cells produce damage-associated molecular patterns or DAMPs, which act via toll-like receptors. Activation of toll-like receptors causes activation of NF-κB as well as MAP kinase pathway. And because of activation of these pathways, there is migration of transcription factors which are now in the active form towards the nucleus, and there is increased expression of genes for pro-inflammatory proteins such as interleukin 1 beta, interleukin 6, TNF alpha, as well as inducible nitric oxide synthase. In addition, activation of inflammasomes causes caspase-1 activation, which further enhances the generation of active form of interleukin-1 beta, which in turn further promotes inflammation. There is plenty of literature to suggest that neuroinflammation leads to glutamate-mediated excitotoxicity, oxidative and nitrosative stress, as well as growth factor deprivation. And these mechanisms cumulatively lead to activation of apoptotic cascade. In retina, what we see in glaucomatous eyes is the RGC apoptosis. So if neuroinflammation has a role to play in RGC apoptosis, can we prevent it by using anti-inflammatory drugs? In fact, the literature shows that ketorolac can attenuate RGC apoptosis after axonal injury. Similarly, treatment with bromophenec was shown to inhibit the RGC apoptosis. Meloxicam also produced neuroprotective effect in a model of anterior ischemic optic neuropathy in rats. And suppression of ischemia and inflammation was found to be associated with RGC apoptosis in another study. And one of the studies has shown that reduction in inflammation achieved with acetic acid is associated with reduction in RGC loss. So these are some of the studies that tell us that yes, reduction in inflammation can help us in preventing RGC loss in glaucoma. What about magnesium? We know that magnesium is the second most abundant intracellular cation after potassium. It acts as a cofactor for more than 300 enzymes involved in various biochemical reactions in the body. We know that it is a natural calcium antagonist and plays an important role in various immune functions. Diseases such as diabetes and alcoholism are associated with magnesium deficiency. We also know that use of drugs such as diuretics, digoxin, cisplatin, etc. is also associated with magnesium deficiency. It is very interesting to note that low magnesium levels have been detected in patients with neurodegenerative conditions such as Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, stroke, or epilepsy. Low levels of magnesium were also detected in the eyes of glaucoma patients, and oral supplementation with magnesium citrate 300 milligram a day for 1 month helped to improve visual field defects in patients with normal tension glaucoma, and a similar dose also improved visual fields not only in NTG patients but also in primary open angle glaucoma patients. Another interesting fact to note is that magnesium supplement helps to reduce ET1 production in endothelial cells. The key pathophysiological mechanisms underlying neuroinflammation and neurodegeneration that are associated with magnesium deficiency include priming and activation of phagocytic cells, activation of pro-inflammatory signaling pathways, and increased expression of pro-inflammatory cytokines and neuropeptides, activation of NMDA receptors that leads to excitotoxic injury, and increased oxidative and nitrosative stress. Therefore, it is important to explore the potential of magnesium-based compounds for their possible use in the treatment of neurodegenerative conditions if they can effectively suppress neuroinflammation. Let me now share some of our experience in this area of research, which started with the questions listed here. What salt of magnesium to use? We reached to a conclusion that we shall use magnesium acetyl taurate, a combination of magnesium with taurine. Taurine is an amino acid abundant in retina and plays a role in regulating calcium channels, and its deficiency is known to be associated with glaucomatous changes in the eye. So we decided to go ahead with magnesium acetyl taurate. Does this chosen magnesium salt prevent ET1 induced retinal and optic nerve injury, retinal oxidative and nitrosative stress? That was the next question that we addressed. And what we observed that when we intraventrally inject magnesium acetyl taurate, it prevented ET1 induced changes in the retinal and optic nerve morphology. It preserved the expression of 3 types of nitric oxide synthesis. As a result, there was reduced retinal oxidative and nitrosative stress. So what dose is the best to use and how to administer pre, co, or post treatment? We came to a conclusion based on our results that 320 nanomolar dose of magnesium acetyl taurate was best to use for further treatment and as pre-treatment 24 hours before injection of ET1. Another important point to explore at this point was to see if addition of magnesium to taurine really made a difference or not. So we carried out a comparative study where taurine pretreatment was compared with the magnesium acetyl taurate pretreatment. So what we observed was that compared to taurine pretreatment, magnesium acetyl taurate pretreatment provided greater protection against ET1 induced retinal cell apoptosis, oxidative stress, as well as nitrosative stress. Hence, it is logical to carry forward this study using magnesium acetyl taurate. So in the next part of the research, we try to explore the mechanisms of action of magnesium acetyl taurate. We also studied if it reduces neuroinflammation, does it prevent RGC loss, and do the benefits actually translate into better visual functions. So this was the study design that we followed. It looks like a busy slide, but largely we had three groups of treatment where one of the group was treated with vehicle, one with endothelin 1, whereas the third group received magnesium acetyl taurate 24 hours and before endothelin 1. Rats were subjected to various visual behavior tests and at various time points were sacrificed to determine the retinal expression of various pro-inflammatory cytokines and transcription factors. At the same time, the rats were also subjected to determine the extent of RGC survival using various techniques such as fluorogold labeling as well as BRN3A immunostaining. Using multiplex assay, it was clear that retinal expression of cytokines, including IL-1 beta, IL-6, and TNF-alpha, was significantly greater in group 2 that received endothelin 1 for all three cytokines. On the other hand, in the group that received magnesium acetyl taurate, the expression of all three cytokines at the same time points was significantly lower compared to ET1 treated group. Western blot analysis showed that the expression of total c-Jun, particularly at 6 hours time point, was significantly greater in group 2 compared to vehicle-treated group. In the MGAT treated group, the same was significantly lower and was comparable to the vehicle treated group. An important finding was that the phospho-C-Jun expression was significantly greater at all 4 time points in the ET1 treated group compared to vehicle treated group, whereas the same was not seen in MGAT treated group. We had a similar observation for NFKB expression, as was the case for C-Jun expression, and importantly, we can see the phospho NFKB expression was significantly greater in ET1 treated group, but the same was not the case in the MGAT treated group. So we could clearly see that the activation as well as expression of the total C-Jun as well as NFKB was suppressed by magnesium acetyl taurate treatment. Analysis of the PCR data shows significantly greater expression of IL-1 beta, IL-6, as well as TNF-alpha gene up to 24 hours in the ET1 treated group compared to vehicle treated group, whereas in the group that received magnesium acetyl taurate, the same was not observed. The expression of all three genes was significantly suppressed. This slide shows the effect of MGAT on ET1 induced changes in the retinal expression of c-Jun and NFKB gene. And what we can clearly see is that in the ET1 treated group, the expression of both genes was significantly greater compared to vehicle treated group, whereas the same was significantly lower in MGAT treated group. And we could see this difference up to 24 hours. To determine the effect of MGAT on ET1 induced RGC apoptosis, we determined the number of live RGCs, and for that we used BRN3A immunostaining. BRN3A is specific for live RGCs, and what we could clearly see that in group 2, the number of live RGCs was significantly lower compared to PBS treated group, while the same in MGAT treated group was significantly greater compared to ET1 treated group. We also confirmed the extent of RGC survival in response to treatment with MGAT using retrograde labeling with fluorogold. This is considered a gold standard method to determine the extent of RGC survival. And here we can see that ET1 treated group has very little fluorescent spot showing lesser number of RGCs compared to one that received MG80. Quantitatively also, we observed significantly lesser number of live RGCs in the central and middle retinas of ET1 treated group compared to previous treated group. However, in the group that received MG80, the RGC number was significantly greater compared to that in ET1 treated group. Finally, to determine if MG80 can preserve the visual function of rats, we did a Morris Watermaze test. This test is based on the rat's ability to recognize a hidden platform using visual cues. So what we can see here in this diagram, in group 2 that was treated with ET1, rats have to take a long path before they could detect the hidden platform, whereas it was not the same in the group that received magnesium acetyl taurate. So this clearly indicates that rats could see better in the group where they were given treatment with MG80, and they could recognize the platform based on the visual cues much better than those that received only ET1. So based on the results of our study, it can be proposed that magnesium acetyl taurate has mechanistic targets both in RGCs as well as glial cells. We have to remember that glial cells have an important role to play in the immune reactions and inflammatory responses in retina. So ischemia-induced neuroinflammation can be effectively suppressed by magnesium acetyl taurate, and it may have potential as an anti-glaucoma agent in nature. So in conclusion, intravitreal administration of magnesium acetyl taurate as pre-treatment before ET1 prevented the loss of retinal cells and preserves the retinal and optic nerve morphology, and it also preserves the visual function in rats by suppressing neuroinflammation and reducing retinal nitrosative and oxidative stress. Literature shows us that MG80 can also produce similar effects against retinal excitotoxic injury. So it certainly has a potential therapeutic benefit as an anti-glaucoma agent. We can take it as an example, and magnesium-based compounds therefore seem to have a great potential as therapeutic instrument. There are a number of publications that have come out from this research. I'm thankful to the research team that consisted of Professor Dr. Nafiza, Professor Dr. Igor, my PhD students Natasha, Azliana Lidawani, and other PhD students and master students in the team, MUHI and UITM research grants. And should you wish to contact me, here is my email address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Definitely an interesting talk. Okay, we only have time for 2 questions. Okay, Prof, are you there?
Yes.
Right.
Thanks,
Okay.
yeah.
Right. So we have 2 questions. I hope you can answer them briefly. The first is, we understand from your talk, the route of administration is through intravitreal. But if this were to proceed with clinical trial, what would be the route of administration? For your information, these questions are posted by our attendees.
Thank you for the question, and interesting. Yes, so the study that we did, we planned to inject it locally in the vicinity of the retina to look for the mechanistic targets, and we thought that was the most appropriate way to investigate that. But yes, when we talk about clinical uses, it is an invasive route of administration which doesn't seem all right in clinical practice. So the next step here comes to formulate medications, maybe nano formulations or other forms, because magnesium acetyl taurate is a water soluble substance. So it certainly needs specific formulations if we want it to penetrate back into the retina. So route of administration may be a systemic route, it may be a topical route, depends on what kind of formulations we come up in the future.
All right, thank you, Prof. The second question posted by our attendees is magnesium acetyl taurate frequently prescribed for neuroinflammation in the clinical settings? And if so, are they available in the market right now?
No, this was actually, this substance was synthesized in the laboratory for for us to experiment it first. So our group was the first one to experiment this substance. So at the moment, no, it is not available for general use or for prescription.
Right, and these compound, they are not used in any other disease model, or are they being
No,
experimented?
at the moment, no. At the moment, no. But yes, there is a lot of literature that shows use of magnesium in other salt forms. For example, magnesium sulfate and similar other compounds. They have been used in other neurodegenerative conditions, but not magnesium acetyl taurate. This was designed by us and was experimented for the first time by our research group.
Right, awesome. Thank you very much, Prof. Renu. So let us thank Prof. Renu in our usual way. I think I'll be the only one who will be giving you an applause.
Thanks,
All right,
Azuddin, for this opportunity. Thank you. Thank
no
you.
problem, no problem.
Okay.
All right, so we will conclude our invited speaker session for this morning. Don't forget to stay on with us with our next sessions, the oral presentation. And I'll see you guys soon. So to all presenters, please join in your respective rooms and we will promote you to as panelists to allow you to speak. Thank you very much.